right, welcome back to our coaching network. Super excited for this one. Coach O, so I told you this when we talked before, the first job I ever had as out of college, really, as a football coach was at Oberlin College. I was a late add to the staff in 2007. So I was a volunteer assistant DB's coach. Oberlin College, not far from where I'm from in the Cleveland, Ohio area. So I'm super excited to have you on today. Again, Coach O, he's the head coach at Oberlin College, and we're talking about program development today. Coach, I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it.
And the little guy. Hi, little guy. What's his name?
Yeah, how about it? Can you say hi? You want to say hi? Say hi.
Hi, what's your
You're
name,
talking
buddy?
about, leadership and program development. It starts here. This is Vance.
Hi, Vance.
You turn 4 in how many days? How many days? You turn 4?
April
7th. So where the countdown is on. So we got an almost 4-year-old.
Hi, happy birthday.
4. Can you say go football?
Go other team.
Oh, other team.
Go other team. That's what you get when you're 4. But when you talk about leadership and program development, I think for the good coaches I've been around, and certainly for me, it is about family. And you try to tie in your football family with your coaching family. So we got bedtime rolling. We got one down at 2 years old. We got a second one going down at 4. But this will be fun. I appreciate you joining me here tonight. And certainly appreciate what you've done with our coaching network. I can think back to taking the job at Oberlin College and hopping into a pandemic and realizing, holy cow, the Zoom world is going to have to be a significant part of professional development. And it was, and it got rolling and going. People like you have grown the profession, done an unbelievable job. And I'm so enamored by your story and what brings us together with your history at Oberlin College and me here now as a yeoman. Kind of the intro for me, this topic is certainly endearing to me. Program development, leadership development, as we go through tonight. I think so many times and over the past, couple of years with the influx of Zoom calls and clinics you're able to hop onto. I love it. I'm a football guy. I'm a football nerd. And to hop on an X's and O's and get a chance to see different variants of inside zone and vertical game and all the things that come with this cool world of clinics, it's been awesome. But as I took the job at Oberlin College, you realize that the foundation, the culture, and program development is such a resource for the quality high school coaches, quality college coaches, and those that I've been certainly blessed to be around. I think the first thing before I get into the intro for me is just kind of recognizing those that have had an endearing piece of my heart in the coaching profession. I hit 40 years old. Number one, played for a really good one at Winona State University. Tom Sawyer just retired after 25 years in the profession. I probably didn't realize it or know it between 18 and 22 years old, going back to work for him. We're still young, thinking you know everything. But Tom was one of the best in terms of program development, leadership development. A lot of what I learned at such a young age is now part of the Oberlin College football program. Others, John Marska at Albright College was an absolute rock star that I got a chance to learn from in recruiting and development and leadership. And then finally, over the past 5 years, Jim Hilvert at Baldwin Wallace University. Rock star is his middle name. I think he understands people, understands football, and he's a fun guy to be around. So the past couple of years at Oberlin College has been an influx of new and certainly setting the standard that we have within our program and introducing a lot of new things to a program that's got certainly some history and tradition to it, but certainly need to start from square one in terms of a football program. For those that are joining that may not be aware of a place that I've grown to love very quickly and a place that I believe in, Oberlin College is elite. We're under 3,000 undergrads total, 30 minutes west of Cleveland, Ohio, which I know you are aware of, but it is a nationally recognized top 25 liberal arts college with a world-class education. There's been plenty of times over the past 24 months I've had a chance to interject and interact with colleagues, professors, faculty members, and it's usually Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Swarthmore, you name it, Williams or otherwise. People endear to Oberlin College because you're going to be around the brightest and some of the more hardworking people. Nationally recognized programs, pre-med, pre-law, neuroscience, and we've got a unique business and finance concentration that brings some of the brightest minds here to Northeast Ohio. I was endeared through the interview process, not only Oberlin's history and tradition, but they did invest. And with investment, you look for return on investment. $33 million was invested into the Oberlin College athletic facilities really over the past 5 years. And a lot of that has to do with our leadership, both from a rock star president and Carmen Ambar and our athletic director and Natalie Winkelfuss, who once you get a chance to meet, no matter through an interview or on a daily basis, you become certainly inspired by. This place has also one of the strongest alumni groups in the country. And I think for those that maybe are looking for a welcome to elite experience academically, athletically, and socially, Oberlin College will give that to you. The John Heisman Club with our alumni group is pretty impressive. The opportunity to network, shake some hands, kiss some babies as a undergrad is awesome. And that John Heisman name brings some history here. Coach Heisman was here at Oberlin College first and foremost, and coached the Yeomen to a victory over Ohio State, which is usually said on ESPN sometime as the fall season comes upon us. Moving on, just kind of to show you exactly what I was enamored by, jaw dropped by, a brand new stadium, locker room, indoor facility, meeting rooms, and kind of a college football atmosphere. That's wow. It became fun in our first year here as a staff, kind of understanding the potential, the promise, and the atmosphere that's created when you do have $33 million invested in that football program. And now I think is attracting those that get wowed as well once you get a chance to recruit top level difference makers here that want to compete both academically and athletically at a very high level. So as we'll kind of go through program and leadership development, the one thing kind of you'll know from me is I want to be an open book. I want to introduce you to our program and kind of what I've done, what I believe in, and what is a constant, palpable culture that's being built here at Oberlin College. But feel free to reach out at any time. If you want X's and O's on a spread offense, great. We've got an outstanding defensive staff and a 4-down front that blitzes a whole lot. And the program and leadership development stuff, any videos that I get a chance to show, it's all yours. It's all something that I've stolen from other places, as we all have in the coaching profession. But feel free to reach out anytime you're in Northeast Ohio. The welcome mat is open, and certainly we'd love to have you check out Oberlin College as a guest. Well, program and leadership development. For me, I think it's got to have a start. And I think as I put together the presentation and really took a look at what was important for me to regurgitate to you and hopefully help whatever program you're associated with, high school, college, or otherwise, it was really an opportunity to assess what I knew to be some important tangible characteristics of culture, and then what has grown here the past 24 months out of a very young football team. Before we get into it, you got to know what you're diving into. And I think to ask the right questions allows you to dive in head first in any situation as a head football coach or an assistant. And that's where I say you can have results or excuses, and you choose as a leader as you kind of put together your plan of development. And the video that we'll get a chance to show and kind of work through together started my journey in program development, allowed me to take a look at a job when I walked into my first team meeting with 27 guys total, and really not a whole lot of history, 35 plus years of not having winning football, but knew and understood that because of plan, purpose, and mission statement, a lot can get done out of a short amount of time. And certainly that's kind of taken shape already here in our Yeoman program. We'll report 70 to 75 in year number 2, and certainly recruiting has a big impact on what we're doing with the people we have. So if you're looking for change, and to me, culture is a part of change. You have to be in a role where you're comfortable being uncomfortable. And if the time is now to do that, to me, there's 3 things that you'll see in a video presented, but also endearing to me about what's important through this process. Number 1, believe in the people. To me, it's people over process. It doesn't matter how you do it, where you do it. It does matter who you do it with. And I think your staff, the players, your support personnel, be it athletic training staff, IT, SID, whatever it is that you're surrounding yourself with. Make sure you believe in the people and the people believe in the process. If you believe in the process and you're able to lead and build a culture that's sustainable and successful and has a little bit of juice to it, this thing can be a lot of fun. And I think anytime you hop into a culture where change is necessary, or you hop into a culture where at the end of the day, you're looking at upon the lead, you got to add to your family or add to that community more in a high school sense in every way, shape, and form. It takes a village. I believe that now at 40 years old, 16 years involved in college coaching, probably a lot more than I did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when you kind of think you can do everything on your own. You need a family and you need a community that's behind you and understands the palpable culture you're trying to build. And I think for me, it became, what is that word and how is it thrown around? But the question that I posed when you start anything is, number one, what is the experience? What is the experience within what you're doing, building culture and leadership development? And does that experience allow your culture to grow? And if you're looking for big change, you got to realize that you are climbing up a mountain, and that mountain you can't hop from one plateau to another. You're going to find crevices, you're going to find rivers, you're going to find falls, but the people have got to be able to strap a backpack on, start looking up and realizing the journey really is a destination. And the journey is the fun part that allows you to find the top of the mountain, eventually being to win a championship, or hopefully you as a coach believing that that win is walking a young man across the stage in their high school or college graduation. To make sure that I've got the clip up, I'm just going to kind of get out of this PowerPoint here real quick and chop real quick into what I think gives you a foundation and the ability to see exactly what I believe big change can and should be.
Jack Welch once said, "Change before you have to." How true that is. Championship leaders understand that in order to remain relevant and competitive, they must foster a culture that embraces change. When you think about the brands that have been around for 100+ years, how they looked in the beginning is much different than how they look now. They changed. The brands they once competed with no longer exist. Why? They didn't change. Grace Hopper once said, "The most dangerous phrase in language is, 'We've always done it this way.'" As the leader, you must relentlessly fight this mindset. Don't allow your team to focus on how things used to be, because used to be's don't make honey. Instead, focus on how things are gonna be. Gonna be's make honey. Gonna be's have a clear vision of the future and how they need to grow in order to become that better version of themselves. They understand constant growth requires constant change. Remember what John Maxwell once said, "Change is inevitable. Growth is optional." Close your eyes and visualize what things will look like in 3 years. How will you need to evolve in order to meet that vision and be a front runner in your space when the time comes? What changes do you need to make? Start making those changes now. As the leader, you have the remote. If you don't like the channel you're on, nobody can change it but you. So stand up and change it. And don't be afraid of the naysayers. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, "Do what you feel is right, for you will be criticized anyways. Trust your instincts. Pursue your vision. Even if no one else sees it, just start the journey. The others will follow. And stay ready. New levels will bring new devils. But the higher you climb, the stronger you'll get. Take pride in being a professional problem solver as you rise. Remind your team that every change you make is an effort to get better. You don't change for the sake of changing. Like Jim Rohn said, life does not get better by chance. It gets better by change. At the core behind every big change is a why, and that why is to get better.
So I certainly didn't want to be an infomercial on great YouTube clips, but I will tell you that is an old timer for me, and certainly one that I use with our team. And to be honest with you, it was a start of the culture that was being built here at Oberlin College. If not you, who? If not now, when? And I think when you look at that video, you realize that you need to build foundational culture. And what I think that means to me is simply what is the characteristics that are qualifiable and quantifiable? Meaning, who can remember the things within your culture? I think too many times I've talked to high school coaches or even college coaches about taking over and what they believe in. It becomes a list of maybe 10 to 12, maybe even more qualities or characteristics. And at the end of the day, an 18 to 22-year-old or even younger probably won't remember exactly what those characteristics are. To me, then they forget the culture. So for us, the foundation of that culture is simply 4 characteristics that are built within everything we do in a locker room sense that I think is really important when you look at the how, the why, and what we're doing. First is reach your full potential. It's an acronym, RYFP, that allows our young men, our student athletes to see the fact that I want to find out how good they can be academically, athletically, and socially. And the thing I like about reach your full potential is there's never going to be a mountaintop. There's never going to be something where I can't push them harder in the weight room and their academics and community service and really how they reshape their mind, their body, and their heart and commitment to finding out how good they can be. The second piece is trust. They have to trust the process, yet trust the people. The third characteristic and foundation within our culture is love. And I think that's one of those words that sometimes makes a college football player somewhat uncomfortable. But I qualify that then in everything we talk about. You better love the game of football. If you do, this thing will be the most memorable and certainly awesome experience that you have. 5.8% of high school players go on to play college football. 1.8% finish their 4 or 5 year career and walk out on senior day. So love is something you better have about the game and about the experience, meaning I want it to be a sponge that you got to squeeze out in the locker room, on Friday nights, on road trips, on whatever you do as a college football player. You absolutely love it. And the fourth and final characteristics in our culture is compete. We compete in everything we do. Why? Is because to win the 40-year dash here at Oberlin College, competition's not going to leave you. So in order to compete in your first job, compete for your future wife, compete for a future promotion, compete when you're trying to figure out potty training like I am sometimes, competition never leaves you. So let's compete on the field. Let's compete in the fourth quarter, knowing that it's not about X's and O's when the game's tied 30-30 with 1:30 left. It is about the ability to compete and the characteristics that are built within our culture. One story, a father that I recruited was a worksman and actually traveled to New Orleans to piece together that city after a hurricane. And one story he told me I did some research on is as hurricanes or tornadoes rip through a community, as somebody in the construction business, it's interesting to see what houses in the same neighborhood that was probably demolished by a tornado or a hurricane. Some houses have a foundation of which you can just simply rebuild a house. And some houses, be it the next door or down the road, are totally destroyed, meaning there was no foundation. They ripped doors, they ripped timber, they ripped windows and everything else that you can imagine. And that's from one house to another. The same tornado or hurricane that ripped through that community. And I think for me, if there's a definition of culture, that's simply it. Can you build a foundation that's going to sustain no matter how hard it gets or how good it gets? It only continues to grow. And if something bad happens, you have a foundation there to stand on and know that better times are to come. Within a program, and I think I've seen this done really well, we're continuing to do that within our program. You have to market your culture. I think in order to market your culture, you find a tagline or something that's endearing to that culture that speaks to somebody that doesn't know anything about it. Nike, for instance, back in the day has just do it. Well, if you hear just do it as a tagline, as a marketing tool, you think Nike, you think the swoosh sign. And at the time when they invented that tagline, it was about what pulls somebody in that has nothing known to them about Nike. The same thing can be said about the Ford company. Ford trucks, built Ford tough, right? You know it, it's on commercials. If you knew nothing about Ford, you'd want to do research on, well, what is the Ford company? Why is Ford tough? let's just do it in terms of Nike. So for our program at Oberlin, it is welcome to elite. What does elite mean? It's not something that says we're better than you. It means that academically, athletically, socially, you're going to be above the norm in terms of expectation. Welcome to elite becomes a definition in terms of our culture. And I've seen that done at the high school level really well as at the college level. And I'm sure there's great examples that you can think of in your own community or watching games on Saturday afternoon, college game day. There's a locker room video, and just with time set up with video, I got here and really kind of decided some things that needed to happen on day one and some things that I knew were going to happen in 3 years. And as a leader building culture, I think you need to identify some systematic priorities for you, knowing that Rome wasn't built in a day. What you would see out of the locker room video and what we did, we put in about $18,000 in our graphics. And graphics into our locker room became something endearing, not only for our current players, for our recruits, but for alumni. So now within our locker room, the standard, the 4 characteristics are plastered everywhere. The history is there. Some of the All-Americans that stepped up and made their name at Oberlin College are built within our locker room. And so I think the investment is something, if you're going to put your stamp on a culture, it's got to be somewhat visible. And so I think a lot of people will decide, hey, I'm going to take a chunk of change and dedicate it to new jerseys or new helmets or new this or something that's maybe flashy. If you're going to invest as a football program and a coach, I would invest in what is your characteristics and how do you visually display that to everyone that is involved with your program or may be involved with your program. And I think that has become a palpable feel of our culture and what welcome to elite means for our program. Growth does not happen without being uncomfortable. And I think at the end of the day, you have to realize that this climb is going to be uncomfortable. And those around you have got to be okay with being uncomfortable, knowing that strength is only built out of being uncomfortable, much like in the weight room, a place that I got to be certainly a little bit more in my old ass age. Continuing that culture, conversation, to ensure that culture extends beyond the field, I think is uber important. And there's different things that I've done in the programs I've been involved with, and certainly here at the OC. You got to take a look at an example off to the right we'll talk about, but also a priority list that was built within my coaching manual as I interviewed here. You're either growing or dying. You're either green and growing or ripe and dying. And I think the more our kids understand that quote and that saying, they understand the culture that needs to be a daily growth mindset. So for us, we build it off the field, beyond the football field, the white painted lines in A, our academic game plan, B, community service, and C, what we'll talk more about in tonight's clinic, leadership development. To the right gives you just kind of an idea real quick about our academic game plan in terms of investment and what I wanted to see with growth, both in the classroom and on the field. I installed our academic top 20 board. So off to the right, you see that very plainly, every kid that has accomplished a GPA puts them in rank order, 1 through 20, but also displays their name, their hometown, their face, and the plans that they have post-grad. Some of them being they want to be a lawyer, they want to be a doctor. We've got a great pre-med and pre-law program. So that's an expectation now that not only do they see, but we see, but some of the 3,000 undergrads get a chance to see every day. And now the culture extends beyond the field and puts a face to the guy in the helmet that you see running around no matter what level on a Saturday afternoon. And to me, if you do that and you extend culture beyond just the field and the weight room and in an indoor facility at 6 a.m. that people may understand what you're doing, but don't always see it, your culture then promotes confidence, right? These young men that accomplish an academic top 20 board, some of them are all conference players, yes, but some of them have not reached the field yet. But you give them confidence about being involved and wearing the crimson and white in a way that's different than just being the best player on the field. Number two, it has measurable accountability, right? Like obviously, our academic board, either you have a GPA, you made the top 20, or you did not. That's pretty easy. But I think if you build a culture, you have to look at measurable accountability. And there's a spectrum that I think, Kevin DeShizo and some culture wins things does a really good job of. There's a continuum of impossible, which doesn't help build culture at all. There's a continuum of improbable that doesn't help balance culture at all. And then there's somewhere in between that you've got to build goals for your young men that maybe not impossible, but is on the brink of that edge instead of being improbable. And it is sustained success, then culture will always be pushed. It can't be a ride the wave type of setup. And I think if you talk academics or tracking community service hours, we want a standard that sustains success and can only grow from it. Because once you have a sustained success mark that's tangible and understood throughout your locker room, your coaching staff room, you can increase a standard then on a daily basis. Meaning you can say, hey, our team GPA is a 3.1. Great. That's the standard. Now let's grow from it. It might be successful when you compare it to program A, B, and C, but it needs to grow for us to feel good about where we're headed as a football program. This is something that, was fun and that I believed in and something I at least wanted to pass along. At Oberlin College, we don't have Michigan, Ohio State when I got here. To be honest, we didn't have a whole lot of wins under our belt over the past 10 years for you to latch on to a big victory or maybe even a rivalry. So I think when you establish culture, one thing that I got from colleagues and some people that I really latched onto and was impressed by and used as guidance and advice was establish a rivalry. Build bridges that link islands, meaning that if you want to hop to a different island and get yourself off of the bad one, you better build a bridge that gets you there. And that bridge isn't going to be going from 1-9, 2-8, or 3-7 to 10-0 in a bowl game or a conference championship or a playoff run in year one. It's not. It's got to be something that kind of creates some steam. I think one way to do that is establishing a mountain peak within the culture. And because that culture and really that build is a marathon, to me, you find the sprint and the race within the marathon. And for me, it was building a rivalry into our everyday schedule. So just like Ohio State, Michigan, the Iron Bowl, or the things that come up in your mind at the high school level or otherwise, you go, man, rivalries are awesome. They are. And for 365, 24/7, it can give you a voice that doesn't become just a blanket schedule. It's something that you circle every day. So when I got here, we really established a rivalry with a very similar high academic institution in the state of Ohio, about an hour and 15 minutes away. We don't say their name, right? Just like Michigan and Ohio State, it's just the team from up north. For us, it's TTFG. And one thing that our kids have latched onto from day one, knowing that we established a rivalry, building a culture, is there's no purple in our athletic complex. There's no purple on a practice field. There's no purple in our weight room. There's no purple when you enter the Phillips Athletic Center. It just gives us a constant reminder that it may be a marathon to get to where we want, but there's going to be a sprint within that marathon that has a little bit more important than anything else that we do. So it is a period within practice. It is a countdown in our locker room. It is a palpable feel because of what has been established within that rivalry out of the simple quote that says, build a bridge that links islands. And when you're on a bad island to get to the other island, you got to find different bridges with different sizes to get there. And I think this is one thing that has helped us grow the importance of being a college football player at a place that historically has attracted some really smart kids, but now we can find those that want to play in a rivalry, want to win a rivalry, want to play in front of 3,000 to 4,000 people, want to be in a homecoming game, and then want to graduate with an unbelievable degree and be a professional to win the 40-year dash moving forward. I think for me, if there's one thing that I can at least pass along and feel good about saying, here's some things that have been embedded into a growth mindset and that have worked at different programs at different levels that just kind of continue to be tweaked and not change. It's really saying, what is early development in culture? What is intermediate development in culture? And what is kind of your final fourth quarter development? And those things come at different times for each program. But to give you an idea of something that maybe you can take just from off the jump, in early development of our culture, we have a Big Brother program. And I'm sure more programs do. But I think it has helped not only with incoming freshmen, but it's helped with the overall culture that's built first by coaches. And then as time goes along, that culture better be held on by players. So our Big Brother program has been a lot of fun to see the growth that has come with it and building a purpose, a vision, and an action plan around a training camp schedule and a season schedule when you have the most time together with your players. The true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. And I think that quote has been the sounding board from our Big Brother program, has allowed us to grow it and figure out better ways to do it. The action plan is simply for us to meet as big brothers, little brothers, twice a week over a training camp period that flows into really our bye week in the schedule. Be accountable for one another, kind of looking out for each other, getting them up for different meetings, and then a competition piece. So we use our Big Brother program to set up competitions, both with your big brother, little brother, and then against your big brother, little brother, because if you're going to build some love, it's got to be a family. And you guys know with brothers in your own family, you're going to compete. So we try to do that within our Big Brother program early in development when people are kind of still feeling each other out. I gave you the schedule in terms of intro that we do. Number one, introduction. So, a big brother got to introduce a little brother got to introduce a big brother. And then really that introduction leads into a talent show. And I think that part has been endearing, something that our kids look forward to as you stay and maintain for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It doesn't have to be pretty. It certainly hasn't been, but it has been good to link up a 21, 22-year-old big brother with an 18-year-old kid and say, here is a charge for you to do a talent show. You can split it up by position, by year. We plan on doing it Big Brother, Little Brother, because of how important this early development plan is. The last thing I'll give you is what you see here: stand up, step up, and recognize. And that is something that we've kind of done within our program and that I really like. And certainly all it is just kind of a series of 20 questions I could forward on through an email that puts a team that's kind of getting a chance to know each other, include first-year players from different parts of the country, and ask them questions that allow them to stand up if it's true about them, step up if it's true about them, and then for the entire program to recognize that we may all have differences. Yes, we come from different walks of life, no doubt about it. We have shared different experiences, and individually, we've walked a different road, but we recognize, appreciate each other, no matter if it's asking or posing a question: who's lost a parent, who's dealt with something in terms of cancer, whose favorite music is country, right? Whose favorite music is rap, who grew up in a one-parent home. Those are the things that have resonated out of our stand up, step up, and recognize program, and something I think is essential in the early development of any culture. Second part is just intermediate development. I think now, as you understand that culture is not static, knowing where you are going and when you want to get there is uber important. And I think that's where, once you know each other, appreciate the differences you have within your locker room, the intermediate development starts with competition breeds success, and allowing coaches to kind of cultivate competition, but also be there when a young man were to fail. I think too many times we're scared of failure. I think at times our society and really just the time we're living in, it's tough for 18, 19-year-olds to fail because failures are on Twitter and Snapface and Facebook and God knows what else. And that's changed a lot. But I think if you're there with guidance and a supportive feel about how competition is laid out in your program, it can breed success. And then finally, to establish the role of how you want to look at captains. I think that's a part of intermediate development and culture. And your captains play certainly different roles at different times, but it's got to be your establishment and how that role of captain is dictated. Because I think it goes back to then the Bobby Knight philosophy. Reading a book and kind of doing a leadership lesson on Bobby Knight brought me to an algebra 2 level of leadership. To me, a captain is chosen by its peers. It's more important than being an All-American and All-Conference player because it's voted on by your teammates. They see 100% of you in the locker room, outside the locker room, on the field, and off the field. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think as a leader, you've got to find out what you want to get out of your captain. Bobby Knight's philosophy was he was going to pick his captain, and it was going to be those 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that he knew he could deliver the worst as the head coach at Indiana. But essentially, they weren't going to quit. They weren't going to back down, and they had enough character to sustain sometimes a perspective where the team was going to rally around who Bobby Knight could go after. And I think that was an endearing quality of establishing the role of the captain, what you're going to ask of them as a unit leader or as a captain that's twofold or deeper than 4 or 5 guys. And I think that's an important piece. I think the Bobby Knight philosophy, I'll go on in the next clip, but adversity is welcomed by great leaders and your captains. They recognize strength is gained only by being uncomfortable. And I think the 3 bullet points that are so endearing in terms of looking at who's won with great leadership and who's lost in my time as a college football coach. Outstanding leaders are defined not by what they know or can do, but how well their team performs, right? Leadership and a culture is great if it's only on a board, but if you're not making somebody thirsty to find the water, leadership and culture doesn't work. And though Bobby Knight's philosophy was pretty out there, he made it work. And I think that's what makes culture endearing to be an individual and being specific to the timing, location, and opportunity that you have as a leader. And finally, in intermediate development, recruit those that support your mission. I don't think off the jump, the time and dedication that you have as the head coach is one that you should just say, I mean, I gotta recruit the AD, I gotta recruit a faculty athletic rep, I recruit alums, I gotta recruit. That's got to come, I think, in an intermediate role. Your first role, right, in the early development is about your players, your staff. And that's where I've learned a lot, right? You can't build Rome in a day, and the intermediate piece becomes recruiting those that support your mission. And once your mission is established, your culture is known, now you can start saying to some people, hey, welcome to elite. And the question is going to be, what is elite? What does that mean? And once you have that question posed by somebody that's not invested with a whistle around their neck or throwing pads on a Saturday afternoon, you've got a culture that's going to grow. Finally, I think championship development in a culture is knowing where you're going, knowing how to get there, and then understanding that motivation and culture is different than manipulation. I think adding value in 3 ways can always make your culture be at a championship level. We'll talk a little bit more about our leadership council and what that cultural development looks like in a team that now understands what they're about, what the characteristics are of the standard, and now how to develop it more and grow leaders. You look at off-season team competition. I think this is something that we're not to at this point in our program, year 2, hopping into our 2nd season, just the where, the who, the why, the how. We're not to a point to split up our teams and say, here's how to compete in a 2 or 3 month period heading into spring practice. But it's something that with championship development, I think you can get to. and you want to get to because it's pretty good. It's endearing. It works. And then finally, weekly one-on-one meetings. I think as a coach, something I think about all the time is, postseason meetings and otherwise, to where you kind of ask, hey, Jimmy, who's your favorite prof on campus? And no matter who that professor is, usually one of the answers is the relationship has been built because Professor Joe has the best office hours, right? Or has office hours in the cafeteria or off campus, or, in the campus bar, right? Like, Professor Joe's figured it out. I think more coaches, when building a culture, have got to figure out how to build in one-on-one meetings that's around and not included in the game of football. We do that within our academic game plan. So our academic game plan coaches one-on-one will not be their position coach. I don't want the discussion about how many drops a receiver had by chance within that one-on-one discussion. I want to ask how their family is, how's campus, how's their girlfriend, how's their mom, how's their dad, how's their social life, did they get to a Cavs game, did they watch something good on Netflix, whatever it might be. I think it's important in understanding how that works. And I think once you're able to tackle leadership and a culture, you understand that it is okay to do that with being the minority. And just looking at what I've found here, let's see if I can pull this off real quick. We'll get to it. I'll keep cranking along so I don't run out of time.
You're good, Coach. No worries.
Okay, we'll get to it. It's a good video. I think you guys will enjoy it, probably, hopefully chuckle a little bit. Okay, finally moving on. Like, in terms of leadership development, I think cultural is so important to your who, your what, your why, your how. Leadership development, I think, is about maybe identifying who those leaders are within your program and then growing that leadership so it resonates with the rest of your locker room. I say this all the time, and I believe in it. Good to great leaders, you have to identify the players and sometimes the staff members that, number one, have the ability to communicate positively and effectively at all times with a variety of people. And what I mean by this in leadership development is leadership and communication can't be grown without knowing who you're talking to. I think that's so endearing. I love college coaching because you're able to recruit a kid. Their family, their brothers or sisters, how they were brought up, what they did as a summer job, how many touchdowns they scored their senior year. I think that's important in terms of communication. And I say that to our players because it's important that Jimmy and Joe, that are roommates, might be able to throw an F-bomb in order to motivate each other on the practice field and crawl up each other's ass. Whereas a senior, maybe he's a captain, if there's a first-year player that's a stud wideout, they've got to be on the right page and route Tommy. That can't happen, right? You can't throw an F-bomb and get the best out of a first-year player because that relationship is not bridged. You don't know each other in the background. So I think leadership development has got to be communication-based, and an understanding that the ability to communicate positively and effectively at all times with a variety of people is the first bullet point. I think the second is pretty obvious. They set a great example in everything they do. They strived every day to reach their full potential. And then finally, it is this. I think leadership development, one thing I found this semester in our leadership council, they undoubtedly want the job and responsibility of the job. And so our leadership council, your captain, we have them apply, right? And if they don't apply, it's okay. Not everyone wants that role. They can create a great example. They can strive every day to reach their full potential, and they might be great communicators. So they're going to be a leader in their own right. But if they don't want the job or title as captain, they don't want to be in the leadership council, that's okay. And I think too many times we vote players in that maybe don't want the role, and then we move forward because there's no growth because simply they didn't want it. So good to great teams need a culture of leadership with work ethic geared towards great results, understanding that the culture you grow is the people that you put into it. The second piece is something that I talk to our guys about a lot, and that's more of within our staff. Sometimes leaders in our coaching world have expectations for our players that are thorough, that are awesome, about meeting times and no cell phones and when to be, where to be. But they don't add expectations you can have of the coach. And I think that's important for myself as well as the rest of our staff. What are the expectations the players can have of me as the coach? And I think a quote from Bill O'Brien, now the offensive coordinator at Alabama, said this a long time ago. Think about this. Every day I had to prepare meetings, a practice schedule, a script for the greatest quarterback in the game, Tom Brady. I will never prepare any other way for anybody at any time. And I think that's an important piece for me, understanding how important expectations are, not only for the player, not only for the coach, but also for the program and what that cultural expectation may be. Silence equals agreement. I just picked this up recently and I love it. Like understanding that here, silence equals agreement. I think there's application in football, there's application in your staff, there's application in life. And I think there's a lot of reality to don't be silent. If you don't agree, don't be silent. And that's leadership if you're not silent. And for as a coach, for them to know, I got 2 kids, I got a family, to invite them over for dinner. Those are the things that's important when you develop somebody outside of just being their coach. I think finally, what moves people to action is simply emotion. And leadership development, you've got to find who's going to be motivated and how. Culture is misunderstood. I think sometimes you must find actionable beliefs and behaviors in every way, shape, and form to move the bus to where you want to get it to. Culture creates an experience more people want to be around. Understand that if they are not surrounded by something they don't want to be, you're not going to find growth. So what do we do at Oberlin College? A, we give ownership in recruiting. B, we give ownership in leadership council. And C, we give ownership in competition. And those things to me is what moves people to action and allows people to see that their investment affects the greater good of the movement that is being made. Leadership as ownership, in my background, just on the left here, what I've seen and what I use today in 2022. My first college coaching job was at Albright College, a Division III school in Reading, PA. When I arrived in 2005, we were 2-8 with a brand new staff in 3 years and 3 recruiting classes and went to 11-2. We played the national quarterfinals. I went then to my alma mater, Winona State, back, and they were 4-6 the year before. 10-2 with the recruiting process to allow current players to have ownership in recruiting. We saw it go from 4-6 to 10-2. I think that season they had was awesome. Colby College in the NESCAC, the little Ivy League, was the next stop. And it was over when I got there. And in 2 years, it went to 4-4 as we played only 8 games. But it was no different in terms of leadership equaling ownership. And then finally, before I got to Oberlin College, Baldwin-Wallace University here in Northeast Ohio was a fun run, 3-7 to 8-2, number 23 in the country. And my investment as an assistant, always as a recruiting coordinator, when looking at culture and leadership, give up to others what you deem to be reality. And in recruiting, we talked a lot about getting the right people on the bus, moving the wrong people off, ushering the right people in the right seats, and determine where to drive it. I think recruiting obviously is applicable in college football, but in high school football, it's no different. You're recruiting those that maybe you want to be part of a freshman team or sophomore team. Who's doing the recruiting, I think, has taken a hold of what our culture is. And when you get to Oberlin for the first time and you ask a young man to say, hey, I want you to have lunch with a family from California and a prospective student athlete that's a linebacker, 6'1", 210 pounds, with this interest academically, and he looks at you and go, what do you want me to do? That was new. That was something not done a whole lot. And it doesn't start maybe from day one as full out, it's yours. But as we've progressed through programs, the more we get comfortable with our culture, the more ownership of leadership. And for me, that does become who is added to your program, and recruiting takes a hold of what we do. Leadership Council, I think, is something that's grown, developed, and something that this semester I'm doing an okay job, but we have to do a better job of. We vote for it within our program. Every senior is placed into our Leadership Council. There's 4 juniors, 4 seniors, and it's a vote. But again, they apply for just a simple vote. It is a weekly reminder that you're in the customer service business, meaning our players, I take stock in how things are going in the weight room, off campus, on campus, in their social life. And I say silence equals agreement, right? So if, I say, hey, man, sometimes it's, Coach, we need more towels. Okay, well, God can get you towels. Coach, we need a sound system for $4,000 in the locker room. That maybe isn't going to happen, but at least I hear their heartbeat and where they want and where leadership development is going. Leaders are able to adjust. And just knowing that, I think for you, it's a matter of like, you got to adjust schedule. You got to understand that if midterms are occurring, you shouldn't hold practice a day before. It's not going to be great. And I think how the program is evaluated in the players' eyes is essential. They've got to see that there's a growth mindset in the weight room as much as you do. So the ownership that we place on that is rating and evaluation of who's doing what and who's doing well, and giving that up. We call it a lunch pail award, weekly basis of who's worked their ass off in the weight room. And our kids generate most of those conversations when we have a chance to meet with our Leadership Council. Our plan, purpose, and mission statement, at least this semester, is built around the hard hat by John Gordon. And that has given us at least a mission statement and a weekly purpose for us to gain something out of a book that I think is pretty good. And I think there's so many out there that you could just spend some time, order online on Amazon, and make it a worthwhile investment for your program. One of my favorite quotes is this: if you want everyone to like you, don't be a leader. Sell ice cream. And that is simply by a guy's quoted a lot, Nick Saban, but one of the best. And I think that's very true into what you get into when you start diving into this thing. I know I've gone a little bit over time, but I think it's an endpoint in a video that is somewhat the culture that I've built from day one here at Oberlin College. Culture cut-ups. Think about adding value and showing something that's awesome from the work week that they put in, be it on the field or off. Like, you have that ability to meet, we only do when we have contact in spring ball and fall. Culture cut-ups are big. Showing something that's really good and that can energize and alleviate just the fact that you're correcting, teaching, and looking at, what has not been done well. Point out what has been done well. Put-ups. Players pick out teammates who allow them to fail only to make them better. That's the only stipulation I put up on. I ask for post-practice put-ups. I call somebody out, put up, stand up, and who kicked their ass maybe that day in one-on-ones, in indie time, in a blade drill, whatever it might be, in special teams time. But that fail allowed them to get them better. One thing, we had an unbelievable special teams coordinator, and I think something that was fun to watch, karaoke special teams meetings, unit meetings, doing something that allows our kids. Sometimes it's picking out a funny video off of YouTube, right? And finally, for the past 25 years, everyone loves swag. So build a t-shirt into something that hasn't changed out of things that we've done, and build that into a competition. There's one last video to kind of wrap things up, and I wanted to do that with something that, what has been something I've shared probably twice a year within the programs I've been a part of. If you've seen it, you probably appreciate it. If you haven't, I would recommend you use this.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes, and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone
Well, by all means, if that's the first time you're seeing the video, it's an all-timer. And I think when you talk culture, my greatest probably advice, culture is not an easy change. You're going to need the first follower. You're going to need to be the lone nut, and you're going to need a little bit of momentum in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully, there's been something out of clinic talk tonight, not about X's and O's or Jimmy's and Joe's, but about culture and our program here at Oberlin College. Real quick, again, if you need anything from me on this topic or anything involved with what we do on the field, don't be afraid to reach out. We're 30 minutes west of Cleveland, Ohio, and certainly a quick follow, a quick call, or a text. I will return it as soon as possible. We've got a really good recruiting coordinator, our assistant coach, wide receivers coach, and Anthony Trotta would be able to answer any questions that you might have if you're a high school coach looking to send a kid off that has superior grades. We recruit the entire country. Again, we're a high academic, top 25 liberal arts college, much like the NESCAC, just outside of New England. We do offer 100% financial need, like the Ivy League. So that kind of gives us a little bit of, we don't play in the gray. It's black and white. Your EFC, we hit if we can get you in. And we work on an early decision application calendar with a slew of junior days and visits online and otherwise. You can find it at oberlincollegefootball.com. That's all I've got, but I appreciate the time and certainly appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I think a part of what we're doing in this virtual world is pretty awesome because of people like you. I didn't even know you had a beard game that good. So, Pat, you're a rock star.
Thank you. I'm working on it here. Coach, we appreciate you. Great stuff tonight. Thank you.